Welcome to Digital Learning, an initiative of Directorate of Collegiate Education, Government of Karnataka. In this session, we shall continue with The Worm written by Nissim Ezekiel. In fact, we'll concentrate on the glossary part and critical analysis of the poem The Worm, prescribed for second semester BA General English, Bengaluru North University. I am Nandana NG, Assistant Professor of English, GFGC, Bagepalli. Let us have a look at the contents of this session. Learning objectives, session outcome, followed by recap of the previous session. The focus will be on the glossary part or the most difficult words in the poem. We will try to understand the meanings of each and every word that the student might perceive to be difficult, so that this poem can be understood in a better context. Later we will have a presentation of the poem. We shall also have a critical analysis of the poem, and lastly recapitulation of the entire session, followed by a small multiple choice question session wherein you can assess yourself about the knowledge that you have gained through the course of this presentation. What are the learning objectives of this presentation? The first and foremost learning objective of this presentation is to recapitulate the previous knowledge that you have learned in the previous session, to acquaint with poetry as a literary genre, meanings of the difficult words. We will concentrate on all the difficult words and try to gather the meanings, to develop interest for reading a poem, and an attempt or a critical analysis of the poem can be seen. This in turn will help to enlarge the imaginative power of the students. At the end of the session, the student will be able to recapitulate whatever he has learned in the previous session. He will be acquainted with poetry as a literary genre. The student will be able to gather the meanings of difficult words for better comprehension. A reading of the poem followed by critical analysis of the poem will help enlarge the imaginative power of the students. Let us try to recap what we learnt in the previous session, which focused on the introduction to the poet. Nissim Ezekiel, the poet or the composer of this poem, is usually known as the father of post-independence Indian English verse. He started modernity in Indian English poetry. In the poem The Worm, there is a conflict or a kind of a dispute between nature and man, but here the man kills the worm and reports the fact. Further, he has more trust in the follies of the common man than in the wisdom of the uncommon man. The speaker demonstrates a wish to escape society and understand himself and his motives. Now let us go to the glossary part. Let us look at all the words in the poem that are deemed difficult. Let us try to have the meaning here. The first word, crawl. It means to move along on hands and knees or your body stretched out along on a surface. For example, the child crawled across the floor. Astounding, surprisingly impressive or notable. For example, the summit. Summit refers to the top of the mountain or the peak of the mountain. The summit offers astounding views. Astounding, you can also say spectacular views. Absurd. Absurd means wildly unreasonable, illogical or inappropriate. For example, the allegations are absurd, the charges are absurd, or whatever he is accusing me of is absurd or illogical. Devious, longer and less direct than the most straightforward way. For example, they arrived at the town by a devious route or a roundabout route. Endure, to suffer something painful or difficult patiently. For example, it seemed impossible that anyone could endure such pain. When a person undergoes a lot of suffering, you can say the appropriate word there would be endure. Vitality, the state of being strong and active, energy. For example, changes that will give renewed vitality to our democracy. Strategic, designed or planned to serve a particular purpose. For example, alarms are positioned at strategic or most important points around the prison. Mock, making fun of someone or something in a cruel way. Derives. For example, he was mocked by his classmates as he fell. Monstrously, inhumanely or outrageously evil or wrong. For example, he was monstrous and violent. Inner eye, Here in this poem, the word inner eye refers to the light receptors which can tell when they are in the dark or in the light. Ingrained, it means embedded or fixed. For example, his deeply ingrained moral convictions. Subtleties, nicety or sophistication. For example, she was very subtle in her approach, or you can say she wasn't direct but she was very subtle. You couldn't make out very clearly what she was up to. Emulate, match or surpass. For example, most rulers wish to emulate Alexander the Great, maybe try to come up to him or try to even surpass him for that matter. Let us have a reading of the poem The Worm by Nissim Ezekiel. I saw a worm the other day after rain, crawling with astounding strength, directed by an inner eye towards a drier place. It moved so straight, O God, to think that I, by such absurd and devious routes, should reach my destination. Is there anywhere a worm blinder than I have been proved, so monstrously incapable of being just itself, enduring rain, moving on, secure and thus ingrained vitality, strategic as a worm and therefore free? Then in bitterness I crushed the worm, sadly determined not to honor more its mocking easy victory. So now it's dead. Pretty worm, where is your strength? The God who made you to be wiser than the cunning subtleties within my brain shall know by this the anger of a man. Only in anger can I emulate the worm's directness. I have killed the worm. A surface reading of the poem very clearly brings out the theme of the poem, how a poem is crawling and how the speaker, unable to accept the fact that the worm is much better or is moving in a much better direction than him, crushes the worm. A surface interpretation of the poem usually gives us at least a bit of the theme that the poet is focusing upon. The poem begins with the speaker seeing a worm crawling after rain with astounding strength, directed by an inner eye towards a drier place. When the speaker chances upon the worm going towards a drier place, and that too just relying on its own inner eye, the speaker is jealous when he sees the worm crawl in a straight line towards his destination. The speaker wonders how different he is from the worm. Here you can say that in the word different here means the speaker feels as a human being he is superior to the worm, yet he can use only absurd, illogical, devious or cunning routes to reach his destination. Here destination could mean anything, his goal, his objectives, etc. So a human being usually has to always opt for devious or cunning routes, unlike the worm. He questions himself, is there a worm more blinder than he? The speaker, when he chances the worm moving in a straight line, realizes his limitations and ventures to advise others on the ways and means of succeeding in life. This is something really true. The human beings, when we ourselves have our own flaws, we are unable to achieve our goals, reach our destinations in the proper route. But then we have the audacity to advise others. We have the audacity to give guidance to others on how to succeed in life, while we ourselves cannot do that. I guess human beings are the most hypocritical creatures of all. The speaker, unable to accept that the worm is better than him, kills the worm in bitterness and stops its easy mocking victories. If the worm travels straightly, or if the worm goes in a straight route and reaches its destination, that is a drier place, the speaker will feel mocked, make it fun at, as if to say, though you are a far superior species than me, yet look at me. With nothing but the basic features, I am able to traverse in a simple route and reach my destination. The speaker, after killing the worm, asks the worm's strength after its death. The poet mentions that God, the creator who has created the worm, is aware of the cunning subtleties and the anger of man. In fact, here this is something ironical, God the creator is the one who has also created the worm, the innocent worm which is just traveling to its dry destination. On the other hand, this is the same God who has created the human beings with that cunning streak in his mind. But the man cannot accept that another species is better than himself. Somewhere human being consider himself to be the best of all. The speaker accepts that he can emulate or match or surpass the worm's directness only in anger, and hence he killed the worm. To put matters into perspective, this particular point, in fact, says that the human beings are unable to accept anyone else, any other human being for that matter, or any other species for that matter, overtaking him or being better than him. If someone else is showing much better qualities, then the person or the human being can never accept it, and they will think of all options of eliminating this other, his enemy. The poet shows the conflict between nature and man. Here the speaker kills the worm and reports the fact. Further, the speaker has more trust in the follies of common man than in the wisdom of the uncommon man. The human being is a very, how do I say, is a very typical creature of God there, in fact, a creation of God. God, though we are aware that God exists, yet somehow we tend to feel that our capacities are superior to God. Somewhere we trust in the common follies of the common man than in the wisdom of God or uncommon man. Though the poet is inspired by the ways of this tiny creature, that is the worm, yet in the complex modern world he finds it difficult to follow that path. Maybe because even if you are straight, even if you are simple, even if you are trying to go in a straightforward manner, the complex society will not let you be that way. We are able to live on the earth because of nature and its resources like light, water, etc. But Nissim Ezekiel does not seem to have much appreciation for the objects of nature, and usually shows man and objects of nature causing harm to each other. So we can say that here the speaker kills the worm and reports the fact. Let us try to recapitulate what we have learned through the course of this session. In the worm, there is a conflict between nature and man. As I told you, nature is represented by the simple worm, while man is represented by the speaker himself. The speaker is jealous when he sees the worm crawl in a straight line towards his destination, because somewhere the speaker feels whatever the worm is able to do, that is crawl in a straight line towards his destination, he just cannot do that. Yes, of course we can do that, but yet our cunning nature always takes over and we somewhere try to find shortcuts to success. Further, he has more trust in the follies of common man than in the wisdom of the uncommon man. Here the man kills the worm and reports the fact. The speaker accepts that he can emulate the worm's directness only in anger, and hence he killed the worm. The speaker demonstrates a wish to escape society and understand himself and his own motives. This was a presentation which focused or which attempted a critical analysis of the poem, and the glossary part also was dealt with a lot of detail. Let us try to assess ourselves whether we are familiar with the content of this session. The multiple choice questions. The first one, the meaning of absurd: logical, illogical, shrewd, absolute. The answer is option B, illogical. Complete these lines from the poem The Worm. Only in dash can I emulate the worm's dash. The options are calmness, lucidity, admiration, power, anger, directness, admiration, directness. And the answer is option C, anger, directness. So the lines will go as follows. Only in anger can I emulate the worm's directness. What does the word mock mean? Cry, think, bend, or to make fun of? And the answer is to make fun of. What does the word emulate stand for? Mutate, mitigate, match, or might? And the answer is the word emulate means match. Now this is a very simple question. What does the speaker kill in the poem, or we can say against whom is the fury of the speaker directed? What does the speaker kill in the poem? Worm, a butterfly, a bird, or a lizard? And the answer is the speaker kills a worm in the poem. The references used for this presentation: thank you.